Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trauma Informed Talk with Coach Gabby, and I'm Coach Gabby. If you're not new to this channel and you're like, Gab, I've been watching your videos for like a decade, and you normally try gross candy and then make silly faces on camera. That's true. That is true. But back then, guys, I wasn't mentally well yet. And now that I'm mentally well, you're not going to believe what happened. I'm a trauma informed life coach, guys. I'm still a stand up comedian, and I'm still one half of Josh and Gab, and I'm still doing mental health motivational speaking. But this past December, I did a 20-hour course at the Center for Healing and Trauma, and I am now a certified trauma informed life coach. Very exciting. And I know people, like, I keep saying it and people think it's a joke. They're like, oh, but you're a comedian. How can a comedian be a life coach? I actually think being a comedian makes me an awesome life coach. One, if you've ever met me or spent time with me, you know I have more energy than a puppy or a toddler. And instead of like it being labeled as something bad, as a lot of you know, for the longest time I was labeled bipolar. I am no longer labeled bipolar. That has been taken off my medical chart. I have ADHD, I have CPTSD, I have anxiety, I have OCD, and I also am on the spectrum. So that's what I'm dealing with. And since I've had proper diagnoses, since I've actually done trauma-informed therapy and like extensive trauma-informed therapy, my mental health has been great. I'm not saying it to brag. I'm saying it because I never thought it was possible. And I went from being someone who, anytime life handed me a challenge, my first thought was, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, truly anything, the smallest thing, I don't want to be here anymore. I mean, when I say my internal monologue was more in line with Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, that would be true. But you guys would meet me, and outwardly, I'm Tigger, right? Oh, Tigger! I've got more energy than anyone in the world. And what was like occurring for the majority of my adult life was internally, I was cruel and mean and so hard on Gab. Externally, I was projecting everything I wanted from humanity onto others. So I was kind to people and I was there for people and I listened to people because I wanted that for me. You know, it was like, I will give what I want, right? And you do that long enough, you truly are left with nothing for you inside. So I'm really happy that I did the work. I got a proper therapist who was focused on trauma informed therapy. I knew that was going to be key for me. Every time, the very first time I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, the psychiatrist, the therapist, they were like, "Oh, well, this happened because of a trauma when you were a kid." And I always thought, like, if this all happened because of a trauma from when I was a child, how come we never work on the trauma? So during the pandemic, 2020, we're all shut down. It is just, I am all alone in a brand new rental house. I finally acknowledge I'm not doing well mentally, and I am now on the search for a new therapist. And at this point, I finally said to myself, I am going to advocate for myself the way I would have for my mother. I'm going to find a doctor who is perfect for me, for Gab Bonesso. And I found her, guys. I found her. I wanted someone around my age. Found her. I wanted a woman. Found her. I wanted someone who was Italian American. Found her. She came highly reviewed in Psychology Today magazine. So I gave her a call, and she's been my therapist since December of 2020. The most I went to therapy with her was twice a week. We'd do 2 sessions a week. I was really struggling with OCD, CPTSD, and anxiety. We've worked so hard together. I'm always like, I give her all the credit, and she's like, well, no, you did the work, Gab. Currently, I see her about once a month now. We do check-ins, and I'm actually writing a book about my mental health and my experience, and she is going to co-author it with me because I didn't want to write a book where it was just like funny stories. I want you to know what worked for me. I want there to be complete transparency and honesty. I want my therapist to tell the world what worked because it might work for somebody else. So that's one of the 2025 projects I write on my computer screen. I've been writing for days. I'm working on a book. I'm finally working on a book, and I'm really excited that my therapist is a part of the book. So, what is this going to be? Why am I using a microphone? Why is it on YouTube? I don't know, guys. Because not knowing until a few years ago that I had ADHD, I always like was cruel to myself because I'm a bad listener. I'm not a bad, like I'm great when you're like telling me trauma and I'm listening and I'm present and I'm reinforcing your feelings. Like I know how to do all that, but like in school when they would like lecture you or like verbal instruction, I really struggle. I've never liked podcasts because it's just listening. I would always tell people like, oh, I like podcasts if they're on YouTube. Like I like to watch a podcast. That's like way more my speed. So I thought if I'm gonna start, being a trauma informed life coach, I should do videos or a video podcast on the topic. I want to have a lot of like free resources for people because I mean so many times in our journey to for mental wellness it's somebody online who's like, oh, by the way, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, and then you go to a doctor and find out, yeah, that is you. So I thought it's very important for this life coach journey, Coach Gabby, to have her own podcast and or YouTube thing. So it's a visual podcast, guys. That's what I'm doing. And I want to talk about trauma because the very first thing I learned in my trauma course that I thought was so valuable, so true, it just like overwhelmed me when they said it. They said that of every mental disorder, trauma is the only one that isn't treated kindly. Like when you come to someone, you're like, oh, well, this bad thing happened to me. Oftentimes people are like, well, you just got to get over it. Get over it. Get over it, or things that I've heard people say to me like, well, I was bullied. It didn't bother me. Why'd it bother you? Oh, okay. Neat. So it is something that people sometimes aren't, they don't want to accept it because the bottom line, and this is the other thing I learned in day one of my classes, every single human being on the planet, every animal, every living creature experiences trauma. Every single one of us. And the way they like visualized it was like trauma with a capital T and trauma with a little t. Because the bottom line is you and I could experience the exact same trauma. You could walk away from it and you might have like a little bit of it that it affects you for the rest of your life or until you heal. And I could be changed forever. Changed forever. We both have different brain chemistry, different everything chemistry, so it's very logical that two people could experience the same event and have different reactions. That event could cause me major trauma, major stuck points, and I want to talk about that because I'm going to talk about stuck points a lot, and if you haven't gone through trauma therapy, you're like, what is a stuck point? Okay, so a stuck point, basically, just in like regular people terms, is you go through a trauma, and based on that trauma, you form a way of thinking about yourself. Now, sometimes it's a way of thinking about the world. Like there are stuck points where, somebody gets robbed by a man and then they're like, I never will trust a man again because I was robbed once by a man, right? So it's like that stuck point dictates how you exist into the world. What also happens on how you feel about yourself. So, I remember I went through a trauma as a child. I finally told my mother what was going on. I was very little, and it was a very, very, very bad, intense trauma that had been going on for months. I told my mother, and her reaction to the trauma, because my mother had been through a very traumatic childhood, was just, okay, you're not going to go to that place where the trauma's happening, and then we're never going to talk about it again, okay? And you're just going to forget about it, and you're going to be okay. And me needing to compartmentalize and then pretend to forget this trauma and then to never talk about it was a whole other trauma. But what caused a stuck point for me is that when something's going wrong, I don't feel like I should talk about it. Like there's no point. Like to me, it was always like, there's no point in talking about it. Because when I talk about it, I'm just told to not talk about it anymore. So why would I talk about it? So I've been one of those people who, when I'm going through a hard time, I'm not sharing it with friends. I'm not sharing it with anyone. Because very early on, I formed a stuck point. What's the point? You tell somebody and you're just told to not talk about it. So why would I ever talk about it? That's just an example of a mental stuck point that was caused by a traumatic incident for me in childhood. And I want to talk about trauma casually. That's the other part of this. I want to be someone who can, I do. I mean, that is one of the reasons I think I do well as a mental health public speaker is because I am not ashamed of my trauma. I even before I had the tools and the vocabulary and a certification to be a life coach, I knew that trauma was not a reflection of me. I knew that was not cool, that was how, like, I'm labeled CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress syndrome, right? PTSD, is that what it stands for? Post traumatic stress? Yeah, disorder, not syndrome. But why am I being labeled because some other grown up or some other person did something bad to me when I was a child or I was a teen or I was an adult? Like, I'm the one with the label? Someone does something bad to me and now I'm labeled. Okay, that seems fair. That never seemed right to me. Another thing they said in the very first class that I really loved, and granted, like, if you want to become a life coach, there are different schools, there are different places. This particular program, this was their school of thought, and I really liked it. They don't look at trauma as a disorder. Even though in the DSM it's PTSD, CPTSD, and the D stands for disorder, these teachers did not feel that. They feel that trauma is an adaptation of your brain. So you go through a trauma, and then your brain adapts to that. Meaning, like, I'm trying to think of something that I've actually had a fear of. Well, oh, geez, gosh, and this is embarrassing, and I'm not proud of this, but back. I need everyone in Pennsylvania, if you're watching from Pennsylvania, to remember, like, 2006, 2007, 2008, I want to say in that time period, Pennsylvania was inundated with a bug from China called stink bugs. This is ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous. Just hear me out. During that time, I was gifted a television set that had been setting out in a shed, okay? It was just outside, like, just in the elements, but I was given it. It was like, here you go, here's a free TV. And it was one of those TVs that were, like, also a VCR combo. I put it in my bedroom. And every night for at least a week straight, stink bugs would come out of that. I didn't know at first where they were coming from, but stink bugs were coming out of the VHS. And so in the middle of the night, I would hear bzz, 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 and it would wake me up, and I'd know there'd be a stink bug in my room, and I would kill it. And then I'd go back into my bed, and there'd be another stink bug in my room. And at the same exact time, I was also being medicated for type 1 bipolar disorder. So I was on drugs like Geodone, Seroquel, Klonopin, Xanax, Lunesta, all of it. And the stink bugs are attacking me, and it's affecting my sleep. And I broke, gang. I broke. And for the longest time, I didn't open windows. I had duct tape, because in my brain, stink bugs get in from the outside. Stop anything from the outside. I mean, I would change clothes from out. Like, if I came in from outdoors, all of those clothes were tainted and dirty, and in my brain covered in stink bugs. So I'd have to take them off immediately upon entering my front door. The clothes that I would wear on the first floor of the house would be tainted, so I couldn't wear them on the second floor of the house. The clothes I wore on the second floor of the house could not be tainted to go into my bedroom. I had bedroom-only clothes. I mean, I was losing time. I lost my mind, all on stink bugs can get in. They can get in. They can get in anywhere. They can get in VCRs that were in sheds. Like, it was intense. It was intense. So I know how the human brain can grab control, activate. Your amygdala can run the show. I spent my entire adult life with my amygdala running the show, okay? And now that it's not, life is incredible. I feel truly like I've gone back to my manufacturer settings. Like, that's the only way to explain it. Like, I feel like I was at my best when I was, like, from the ages of, like, 8 to 12. I feel like when I was 8 to 12, my mom and dad were finally getting it together. They were getting their lives, like, they were getting solid professionally, financially, mentally. Like, they were doing well from the time I was 8 to 12. And my oldest brother hadn't moved back back home yet. So I didn't have that trauma yet. That wasn't there between 8 to 12. And right now, how I feel, that's why I'm calling myself Coach Gabby, because I feel back to who I started as. I am Gabby Bonesso. I'm the youngest of 5 children. My parents are Beanie and Star. I'm their love child, okay? I love who I am, and I am grateful for every trauma that I went through, because had I not gone through it, I wouldn't be the Gabby Bonesso 2.0 we see today. So, yeah, that's what this channel is going to be about. It's going to be talking about trauma. I want to share things I learned in my trauma class, things I learned through doing trauma therapy. I want to share parts of my book with you. I want to share it all, gang. And I want trauma to be something that we can talk about comfortably. We don't need to be activated. And it has to be a safe place, because you can never heal from trauma if you don't feel safe. Just how it is, gang. You have to feel safe, even in a room, in your own brain, to truly heal from trauma. And as someone who is healed from trauma, as someone who, guys, I never thought this was possible for me, man. I never thought waking up and just feeling good, going to bed and actually being able to sleep because my brain isn't rushing. Being kind to myself has been such a gift that I've given my inner child, that I've given myself. I've been so mean to myself, and for the last 2 years, I've been nothing but kind. And it's really just a wonderful thing. In terms of finding out I was on the spectrum, it's been awesome to mask less. You know what I mean? My poor sister, I feel like, gets the brunt of it. Her, Bethany, that's my best friend, because they'll like open up the gate to me talking about old movies, and then it's just like, look out, and then I info dump for like 20 minutes, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I just realized I info dumped. They're like, it's fine. And it's awesome to be able to do that, have that, be supported, be loved. To say my gratitude list overflows would be an understatement. I mean, I meant to make gratitude lists because I am grateful for so much. I'm truly grateful to be here, because my brain didn't want me to be here. At least parts of it. Parts of it were trying to help me. Your amygdala, you think your brain hates you. It doesn't hate you. It's just really trying to protect you, but it does it in like a sometimes aggressive way. And there were times where I just really I didn't even feel like I was worth anything. Like, and that's so sad, Like, what does it matter? Oh, not me. When I say, like, my brain was Eeyore and my physical energy was Tigger, that is the truest statement of them all. And maybe that's how a lot of people with ADHD and autism feel, like a little mix of the two. Like, I know there are a lot of people with autism who vibe with the energy thing. Like, I just have this energy, and for the longest time it was labeled mania, and mania isn't good. So anytime I was up, I was always being told, don't, Gab, if you get too up, oh no, you'll be manic, full blown mania, and that's when bad stuff happens. And the whole time it was just energy, and like, to feel badly about who I was for so long. There is like some trauma from the misdiagnosis of bipolar. My therapist and I've worked on that too. Like, that was rough, I mean, I know a lot of people want me to be more upset about it. I constantly have people like, Gab, you thought you were bipolar for 20 years and now you're not bipolar. Aren't you angry? And I'm like, I'm just so happy to be here. Like, I'm literally so happy to be alive. For so long, I just could not understand why I didn't feel like I thought like anyone else. Like, I didn't even feel like I thought like my family, my mom, who I was so connected to. She'd always be like, your brain is different. Like, my brain is just different. And like, now that I know why my brain is different, I don't have to feel badly about myself, and I don't have to try to be like the rest of you, and that has been such a gift. That is, like, I think the biggest gift I've had in recent years is that, like, I'm perfect just the way I am, and so are you. So if this kind of talk is something that interests you, stick around, because I'm going to be making a lot more of these. I hope to do this weekly. I don't want to put pressure on myself like 3 times a week, because that's just not realistic, especially when I'm performing. Like I have shows the rest of the week, so God knows what my voice will sound like. But yeah, I would like to do this weekly at least, and talk all things trauma and in a safe and comfortable and casual way because every single one of us has experienced it. So I don't think we should feel shame, and I'd like to make space for us to talk about it. If this does go well, also if like people do want to talk more about trauma, I am open to maybe once a month doing live, so we can like, and I could do like some free coaching advice on a YouTube live or something. But that's a conversation down the road. I just want to do an introduction video to get this started, and yeah, I'm Coach Gabby, and thanks for joining me today, and I hope I see you next time. Bye.